Welcome to They Live by Film, a film discussion podcast focusing on the Criterion Channel and beyond. My name is Adam Lundy, and I am joined as always by my co-hosts Chris Haskell and Zach Bryant. How are you doing today, guys?
Doing good.
Awesome. Any news, any little tidbits before we get started?
I think this week is new house week, right? Congrats, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. I moved into my new house here a few days ago. Have my nice new office set up. Nice to finally get out of my parents' house. Been there for a couple of years, trying to save up for this one. So glad about that. Something else to bring up just before we get started. I know many weeks ago, way a bit too long ago, we had COVID special, our vaccine special, what have you. Today is also going to be a vaccine special because at the time of recording, I haven't been vaccinated. But by the time the episode comes out, I will have been vaccinated. I'm going for my COVID vaccine tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Finally, getting the Johnson & Johnson, the No More Tears vaccine, what I like to call it. So
I will not feel like shit. I will take the Johnson & Johnson.
You can go back to spitting in people's mouths like you always did before.
I can't wait to go lick some on the people's eyeballs. It's gonna be so fun. My girlfriend's already, she got vaccinated just over a week ago, and so I'm looking forward to finally getting vaccinated myself. Because here in Ireland, for opening up of like pubs and restaurants and stuff, for now they're only letting people who are vaccinated in, which is a contentious sort of thing on its own. But at least I can go to have a meal or go to a pub after tomorrow, which would be nice because it's been a bit far too long since I've been indoors.
That's great. Congrats.
Yeah, looking forward to that anyway. But look, we'll crack into the first film of this week, which is the Wim Wenders film from 1987, Wings of Desire. To give it the German title, Der Himmel über Berlin. You'd never know I took 6 years of German in school. Just to give a brief synopsis, any listeners here who haven't seen it, and just to give a heads up warning, there's not a lot you can really spoil in this film, so feel free to sort of listen away the whole way through, even if you haven't seen it. There's nothing really we can spoil with this kind of film. Basically, an angel tires of overseeing human activity and wishes to become human when he falls in love with a mortal. Anyone want to jump in with any sort of initial thoughts?
Zach, you go first if you don't mind. I'm going to pull up They Shoot Pictures. I forgot to do it first.
So I'm going to give a little background about my day, and this is going to be relevant to when I started. So I went to go watch this on HBO Max because I could watch it on my TV then. And long story short, that ended up being a disaster trying to get it up. So it got me in a little bit of bad mood trying to get that to work, and validated me buying physical media and all that. But I was in a little bit of a sour mood because it took me so long to actually get the movie up to watch it. And so I don't think I necessarily went in with the right mindset, because as soon as I finished it, I went and saw what you guys kind of rated it on Letterboxd, and I realized I gave it a significantly lower rating than you guys did. Because I went in, I really wanted to like it. Like, I was like, oh, it sounds cool. I love Peter Falk's in it. You got Columbo. You got Nick Cave, who is one of my favorite musicians. He plays at least a little bit of a part in it. Bruno, I'm sure I'm going to say it wrong, but it's Gans. I like him and stuff. I've seen him in. So I was really looking forward to it, and I just did not connect with it at all. There were parts I really liked, but overall, I just did not connect with the movie at all on any. Like, I don't know if it's just like I'm not into magical realism as much, and it just kind of felt like really optimistic, and maybe I'm just a cynical asshole, or I particularly was when I watched it, and I was just like, I just don't care. And I hate to sound like that.
No, that's fair. Like, this is definitely a film you need to go into in the right mindset. I came out of it, like, I didn't watch it when it came up in the film clubs. I'd only watched it like earlier in the year. I think it was back in end of February, start of March. So it was still pretty fresh in my mind anyway. So I decided not to rewatch it because I wanted to get other stuff watched that week. But I remember just loving it. I was blown away by the film. Magical realism, as you said there, Zach, is definitely a great way of describing the sort of a genre. I think the way I described it when I wrote my review, it was like sort of equal parts Bergman existentialism and Fellini fantasticism. It kind of has aspects of both. But yeah, I love the picture. I want to see what Chris says now, which sort of side of the fence he falls on.
Okay, so just to be objective first, the They Shoot Pictures is 218. The highest it was ranked was 210. And, I think y'all have been around the subs and around, like film discussion for a while. To me, that feels right as far as matching where a lot of people would like put this film, certainly in the top 250. That feels right.
Yeah.
We talk sometimes about some of the subreddits being like an echo chamber sometimes, and this movie is certainly inside the echo chamber. I think people, as they talk about this, there's even though we only did this discussion like 2 weeks ago or something, there's already another post on the Criterion sub that came out like 2 days ago where somebody was like, just saw Wings of Desire. Oh my gosh. And like, there's like 50 comments or something. People like, I love it. So when I saw this back in 2001, 2-ish, for about probably 5 or 6 years after that, I said it was my favorite movie. I really loved it at that time. It was also kind of near the beginning of me branching out into like art house cinema, and I think that the fact that it was, Zach, the word you used, magical realism, or like whatever that term is, I kind of opened my eyes a little bit for like, you can do this in a movie, like, oh my god. And like, like the way that they use voiceover to kind of get the inner thoughts of people as the angels were walking by.
Yeah, love those.
Yeah, like they got to hear something that like nobody else heard, and there was like a connection there that was deeper than the people were experiencing even when they were in, kind of real. The way it split between black and white and color creatively, just really like kind of bowled me over. Watching it again, I probably liked it a little bit less. I think in a weird way, I found the structure of it a little bit cheesy or hokey this time. And I found myself more being like grateful for the movie for being this thing that like opened the door to me to watch so much more art house cinema, foreign films. Like, the reason I'm liking Fellini so much in 2021 is probably partially because of Wim Wenders back in 2001 and like the journey that he set me on. So like it holds a special place in my heart. I love the idea of this movie. I love the concept. It did not land as well with me this time around. But I'll always rate this movie high and love it, I guess, for the way that you would like a long lost relative or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I got that. It's definitely, I suppose, if we can only really say one thing about the film, I don't think anyone can question its creativity. Some people may not enjoy the structure or certain elements of it. Like you said, maybe hokey or cheesy. Some aspects could potentially be seen as, but it's certainly an extremely creative film.
Yeah.
Like the parts that you mentioned, as the angels are essentially hovering throughout the streets of Berlin, picking up the thoughts of random people. I adore those scenes. I even prefer them to the scenes like that actually have people and action. Like I could honestly watch that for like an hour and a half. It's kind of Malachian without the pretension, if I could be so bold to say that. I don't know who Terrence Malick fanboys might be trying to burn my house down now after this comes out, but yeah, there's something very humanistic, even though the fact that the film is about these sort of supernatural overseeing beings, the fact that they are listening to just the thoughts of normal people is very humanistic in that sense. And Wenders is the way he captures that with the sort of with the slow zooms and the tracking shots and everything. It's just gorgeously framed. Like those kind of like, I don't think I've seen as good of a sort of tracking shot implemented outside of either The Shining or an Alain Resnais film. Those are probably like something like Hiroshima Mon Amour / Last Year in Marienbad, which would use a lot of sort of tracking shots. that along with The Shining are probably the two best uses of tracking shots in film history. Wings of Desire and those sequences is right up there for me, and just in terms of how beautifully controlled the shots are. Um, it's not wholly original, I suppose. Maybe it'd be the only bad thing I could say about it. And I didn't even realize this when I was first watching it. I've only realized it this week when I watched A Matter of Life and Death, the Powell and Pressburger film. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. A lot of the sort of, well, I wouldn't say the main concept is similar, but A Matter of Life and Death, just to give it a really sort of brief synopsis, is about this pilot who kind of final destinations himself, and the fact that he was supposed to die, but because it was foggy, his angel guide to the afterlife missed him, and he ended up surviving, and he has to sort of, defend himself to say that he should be allowed to live. But the whole idea of going from like black and white to color is used a lot in that film. The black and white is in the afterlife, like with this, when it's showing just the angels, it's in black and white, and then the human world is shown in color. It's the exact same in A Matter of Life and Death. Even the sort of get-ups that the angels wear with the sort of big, sort of classical wings that you would sort of see typically on an angel, even they're the exact same in A Matter of Life and Death. So if you were to put a gun to my head and say, look, you have to say one bad thing about this film, is that there's some aspects of its presentation that are not wholly original. But yeah, I can't really find a whole lot more to say negative about this film. It just really clicked with me on an emotional level, which as a film lover, I wish happened more, but honestly, it doesn't. Like when I watch films, a lot of the time I think, this is great, this is fun, this is entertaining, I can get behind this, or, oh, I like the idea of this. I don't actually get emotionally engaged a lot of the time, where I feel an emotion watching a film, and like this one is one of the ones that does it for me.
Yeah, that's what just happened to Battle of Algiers for me, but that's a different podcast. So, I guess I'm curious to hear, because I still hold a lot of affinity and like love for this movie. Seeing it again, Adam, if you have any opinions on this, or Zach, if you do, I know it's your first time seeing it, but like, what do you think he was trying to say by making these poems so much about the children? Because so much of the spoken poetry was about like the mind of a child, or like the perspective of a child. Did y'all have any opinions or thoughts on that? I thought that was an interesting. I didn't pick up on that or remember that detail as much from when I had first seen it. Maybe not.
I'm just sitting here thinking. I mean, I know they were the only ones that could see angels, like young, and I guess if I'm going to put anything behind it, it's the idea that children have gotten to, they're at that point in their life where there's a lot more positivity. Obviously you get into the film, you see the guy who kills himself, you see the guy who dies on the street. There's a lot of hardship with getting older, and you can't see the innocence and necessarily the positive aspects when things are tough. I mean, that would be kind of what I would take from that.
I know this is a weird thing to do on the podcast, but do y'all want me to read just two verses just to see if it triggers any memories of it?
For sure, because you mentioned that you didn't really pick up on it the first time you watched it, and I didn't really pick up on it until you mentioned it here. I kind of have an inkling about what maybe sort of Vendors is trying to say, but I'd for sure love to hear a couple of verses if that's okay with you.
I missed that this was your first time, Adam. That's cool. Okay, yeah. Okay, so just two verses. They're both short. When the child was a child, it walked with its arms swinging, wanted the brook to be a river, the river to be a torrent, and this puddle to be the sea. When the child was a child, it didn't know that it was a child. Everything was soulful, and all souls were one. There's a whole bunch more about that, and it seems to be centered around the children having a more interesting or innocent view of the world that the angels identified with. But anyways, I wanted to
yeah, that does kind of tie into what I was thinking. Like, I think we brought it up before. I'm not a religious person, like, at all, but obviously I'm sort of familiar with concepts. Like with the line, the child is a child, I don't mean for this to become a literary discussion, even though I am an English major, I'm kind of interested, but I don't mean for this to become a literary discussion. But when I hear that when the child was a child, and I think of it from a religious context, I think of all humans being God's children. So when humanity was a child, their imaginations were bigger. That's what I'm kind of taking away from this. And as you get older, you become more disillusioned. Zach said, you see horrible things, and your view of the world becomes less magical and more disillusioned because of the hardship that you sort of endure as you become an adult. Technically, you're still a child in the eyes of God, because humans are all God's children, as that's what the Christian belief system, or most belief systems, go on, really, that we are all God's children. So when I hear the child as a child and he thought this was that and this was that and this was that, to me it seems as though he's trying to say is, when human children are able to see the world as a much more magical place, and like Zach said, that's why they can maybe interact or see angels, because they're able to view the world without the pessimism that comes later on in life when you've been through hardships.
Interesting. And so in that way, when the angel, we're just openly talking about spoilers because there's not really anything to be spoiled, like you said.
There's not really. There's nothing really that can be spoiled with this.
So when the main angel decides to become a human, he is then entering in as a child, right? Because those first few scenes, he's sort of discovering like color, and he's discovering like things that he's only ever heard. It's almost like somebody, with scientific intervention now, people that are like, we're blind can maybe see like a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Like he's sort of a child in that sense, maybe, right? So he's kind of going through all the similar emotions.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was probably my favorite part of the film. That probably remains one of my favorite parts, is to see like this man who's like grown man, angel, but like him come down and see the excitement around things that we tend to take for granted because we've done them so many times, or we no longer get excited about seeing the difference between red and blue, these things. But to see him in that state, that's the thing that I always smile the most, I think, in that part. Like, just watching that pure moment of like joy, of like he's happy with this decision, and like, he's getting to experience the thing that he always wanted.
I will say, that was probably the part of the movie that kind of like regained my interest back. Like I'd kind of checked out a little bit by that point. And then that kind of brought me back in, and, not to get, it went away again. But I'm with you, Chris, that if I have to pick a favorite part of the movie, even if I'm more negative on it, I thought that was definitely the most fascinating part. That and his interactions with Peter Falk. Probably the gag I did think was the funniest of the whole thing is, where he can sense that there's an angel nearby. He keeps talking to them, and the guy in the background who's ever fixing food for him, everybody just looks confused. He does it like 2 or 3 times, and the whole time the guy's just sitting there just trying to figure out what he's doing, and I think that's great.
I suppose you brought it up. I was going to bring this up when we sort of stopped, when we kind of moved on from one of the other discussions, but I think we have to bring up Peter Falk. He's as good as, like, I really like Bruno Ganz. We discussed this back when we watched The American Friend. Love Bruno Ganz, fantastic actor. Star of this film, though, was Peter Falk. He was just incredible. He was, for a guy who made his, I don't want to disparage Columbo or anything like that, but for a guy who made his career, just being a detective and doing detective-y stuff, he was stupidly, insanely good in this film. Playing a fictionalized version of himself, not even, like playing like a character or anything like that. He was, being himself, and he just exuded charm and warmth, and, the interactions with with the angels were fantastic. Honestly, like he was like one of the highlights of the film for me. He was utterly brilliant.
I love the scenes, knowing that he had made a similar decision to like come down to earth and lose his wings and sort of live as a human. Looking back on his early scenes where he's like painting people or drawing people, I guess, or like where he's engaging with like the elderly and the children of the scenes, and sort of like more dismissive of the people that were close to him, like in age, like his peers. I thought that was a nice little touch. Like he gets so excited to see the elderly woman and make her feel beautiful, or like so excited to make the children smile. I don't know. It's like it's a sweet time.
It ties back to what we were talking about with the poetry, and with when the angels become human, they're coming in as children, and that's probably why Peter Falk can still see, the other angels, because he still retains that sort of childlike wonder with the world.
Yeah.
That, other people his age have long lost, through disillusionment.
Now, I just want to clear up because I may have misread that part. I thought he was saying that he used to be one. Did I miss?
Yeah.
Did I miss?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, I
So
wanted to make sure I didn't just misunderstand that saying completely.
yeah, it's implied. I don't think he ever explicitly said it, but it's heavily, heavily implied that he was an angel who took a similar decision that
Okay.
that Bruno Ganz's character. It's either Damiel or Cassiel. I can't remember which one, but yeah, he basically made the same similar decision to become human.
Okay, you were talking about. I was like, oh my god, did I just completely misunderstand that in the entire second half?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I'm not saying that Peter Falk is a walking man-child, and that's why he can see angels. Yeah, no, my idea. Now, it could just because he was previously himself an angel, and that's why he can still interact with them. But I think it ties kind of nicely into what we were saying before about angels. When they become human, they're essentially have the wonderment of a child, and that's why he can still see them. But I suppose it's open to interpretation either way.
Yeah, but no, I agree with your original statement. I think Peter Falk was excellent in this movie. He probably is my favorite part as well. And actually, you got me thinking now about that comment you made about Fellini. I wouldn't have necessarily said that, but I think you're exactly right. It is a great catch. Like this, every time that they're on a movie set or in the circus, that could be lifted right out of a Fellini film.
Yeah, it's the circus part that really drove it for me. Like I was just like when I was watching this film, I was just trying to put my finger, on what the style was. When you're watching a film and especially like I'm not very well versed in German cinema, so it's not like I can easily put this into it's a French New Wave film or it's a film noir. It's not like I can easily pin that into a movement. So when I was watching this, I was trying to put my finger on, what kind of style we're looking at here. And obviously the Bergman stuff with the existentialism kind of came naturally. It's not as sort of dark and heady as some Bergman, but, I got that kind of vibe. But yeah, as soon as the circus stuff came in, I thought, okay, well, this is just kind of like a Fellini film.
Yeah, no, it's a great call out. The movie sets as well, they could have easily been lifted from some of his later work. He kind of did. Whether or not it was actually on a movie set, they had that kind of same tracking thing where it's just like tracking through the, and there's like, they're only kind of set up on the perimeter, and there's like literally just like a fall to the death if any of them like step over the edge. And it's this really very unique, like interesting set, basically, like natural set. Yeah.
Cool. Any more final thoughts or tidbits on Wings of Desire?
I guess one thing I just kind of want to highlight, I wanted to really just let you guys kind of talk, because this is one of these movies I just really, really, really want to like. I've heard so much about it. I like the idea of it. I love the way the film looks. I didn't even, one thing I thought was really cool when I watched the beginning was Claire Dennis was the assistant director, and I've watched a couple of her things, which I thought was really cool to see that connection. So I really want to give this another chance, but I think I need to be in the right mindset to appreciate it like I want to. So, because I when it comes to like what's wrong with the film, the only thing I can come up with is my mindset with it. Like I can't blame the film for anything. Like I just couldn't connect with it, and I can't give like a reason that any of the filmmakers did wrong on doing it. I just couldn't connect for whatever reason.
Yeah, this is the kind of film to watch when you've had the day off, you've done all your favorite things, and you just want to sit home and relax and just watch something nice. That's the kind of film, not the kind of film where you've battled with, HBO or whatever, and you're in a pissed off mood, because then it's just all the schmaltziness of the film is just going to piss you off even more.
That's true. I made a mistake, and I want to correct it on this podcast. I wrote in the review where for the film club discussion, I wrote that my only real negative thing to say about this movie was that it was a fairly privileged perspective of like what it means to be human, because there really wasn't a lot of like pain that was discussed in the movie. Like there was this whole other side of being human that's like sucks really bad for some people, right? And my like as I was watching it, I was like, yeah, like this is sort of like a very like safe kind of, like PG view of the world. Like there's some real trauma in the world. But I forgot, and somebody else's review got this to my attention, so I want to like correct this on the record, that one of the main characters that the other angel followed, the one that didn't become human, that was like his buddy, one of the main characters that he followed was a Holocaust survivor, and just talking about the history of Berlin. And so my statement's not really true. Like they included the worst parts. And so I think it's interesting to, I guess the only piece that's never really been resolved for me was why he chose to give up his wings. Zach, you shared what you were jokingly saying is your favorite review. And it's an interesting point. Like it's funny to say like, how dumb do you have to be to give up your immortality? And but there's also like I think it's also an interesting point. Like I've never fully resolved like why he chose to come down, unless it goes back to kind of what we've been talking about this like appeal of sort of having this like innocence and getting to experience life for the first time. But I don't know if that's enough for me. Like I've never been able to fully resolve it.
Well, the connection I kind of made there, and it's definitely not purposeful because this came out later. Everyone who's ever listened to this knows I'm a huge Carpenter fan, so I'm going to bring up Starman. Chris, have you seen Starman?
I have not. Sorry.
Okay, so I'm not going to spoil anything, but a big theme of that movie is Jeff Bridges takes the body of this woman's deceased husband, and he's sort of trying to learn how to be human so he can be taken back home. And one of the things that's a big part of that is, he lives in a world that they don't have any pain, they don't have any things like that, but they also don't have a lot of joy. Like he sees a lot of the whole time he sees all this pain, but at the end of the day, he sees the happiness and, the small moments that people enjoy. And I kind of felt like maybe I was just like making a connection that wasn't there. But when I watched the movie, that's kind of the same sort of thing I thought they were kind of going with was, yeah, he can experience no pain forever, but maybe he'll never get the joy he needs. And maybe that's worth it.
It's the old C.S. Lewis argument. Did y'all, I don't know if y'all ever read any of his stuff, but his wife died and he was like wrestling with that for years. And he wrote a book, I think it's called The Problem of Pain. Anyways, he wrote a book, and in that he says the best he could come up with is that if he never got to experience the pain life brings, he would never get to experience the beauty of it. And so it was like, not that he was okay with the death, but sort of saying like, I understand the purpose of having pain so that you get to also then have the opposite and get to experience those moments of joy. Right. So
yeah, you gotta have a barometer there, or not barometer, but I can't remember the right phrase. But you have to have there has to be something to compare it to. Like if you've never had pain in your life, how do you know what joy feels like?
Yeah, honestly, that's good enough for me. I didn't make that connection, Zach. I'm glad you said that. I think that closed that loop for me. I don't know if that was Wender's intent, but that's certainly I believe that as well. So yeah, okay, great, solved. Okay, welcome back to Interview Corner. We've never officially changed that to the name, but we've just been very fortunate to get a lot of interviews in Collection Corners. So maybe we can find a better name for that, y'all, one day. But Lewis Justin from Massacre Video has been the most punk rock member of the independent distribution game since 2007. He's been just directly plugged in to kind of films that are in the gutter, as he so lovingly puts it. But in the meantime, he's amassed some deep connections in the industry. I'm excited for you all to hear this interview. I knew of Massacre Video through the movies that I collect. I had no idea his depth of knowledge, and he's kind of a historian. So it caught me off guard in a really wonderful way. And I thoroughly enjoyed this interview. So appreciative of Lewis to give us the time, and I hope y'all enjoy it.
Okay, yeah, joined by Lewis Justin from Massacre Video. So Lewis, thanks again for making some time for us.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure.
Yeah. So you've in some form or fashion, Massacre Video has been around since, is it at least 2011? Is that right?
2007.
7. That's okay. I was off. That's amazing.
Yeah, our first release was in 2011, though. I think at the end, or it might actually have been the early 2012, possibly. It started originally as an online DVD store. after exploitedcinema.com shut down. I had been friends with Tony and kind of like would pick his brain about that a little bit. I wasn't say I was friends with Tony. I was like an annoying kid at a convention to Tony, but yeah, but it pretty much picked his brain and kind of did that, and that was cool and all, but that wasn't really what, like, I didn't really like doing it very much. So then the distribution aspect came a little later.
Okay, well that's great. And so you've been in DVD, you've been in Blu-ray, and you've been in streaming, as well as sort of this with this new with Massacre, with the streaming site that you've got going as well. So you've kind of been doing it all now in these 14 years.
Yeah, I've been doing it independently all this time. The streaming company, the streaming service is pretty fun. It's still being developed on the back end, but soon we're gonna actually have a lot more movies from other labels and things as well. So
that's great. That was a question because I've been like a subscriber or whatever to your streaming site now for a few months, and I noticed this trend, whether it's Arrow or whether it's yours or whether it's there's a few other ones that are starting to get off the ground. Shout Factory has one as well, but it seems like it's typically their own content, but it just feels like for what you're putting out, like there's this really like underdeveloped market, and you could potentially be a pretty powerful distribution arm for a lot of the really wacky and wild side of cinema.
I would like to be the platform I'm dealing with. I've been dealing with the owner, Sam Lucas, a lot, and he's a really cool guy. I'm kind of stress testing them right now because they say we can put up, pretty much whatever we want outside of hardcore pornography. And I've explained pretty much to them and their PR people and everyone what some of not everything that we do, obviously, because I would say it's a multi-range, but there is some titles in the catalog that most places will not even just allow on their streaming platform. So we're kind of stress testing them with Tumbling Doll of Flesh right now. So
that was one I was going to ask about, actually.
Yeah, so if that one is they've seen no issue with it and they're pretty cool, they're pretty pro independent cinema and aren't weird about it. So hopefully that'd be cool because we're gonna actually, we're gonna do Unearthed Films, their stuff. So we're gonna do the American Guinea Pig series pretty soon on there.
Shit.
Yeah, stuff like that.
That's stuff. Great. So that's kind of ties in to something I've heard from a few different folks now, that this industry, just personally as a collector, it feels big and wide and kind of vast. But as I'm getting to know more kind of label owners, it feels like it's not actually that big of an industry, that big of a world once you're kind of in it. Is that fair?
There's 15 of us. Yeah, I would say that's fair. Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely gives on the mirage than it's larger than it is.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you kind of know all 15 over the years, right?
Yeah, definitely.
That's
I work in the same office as David from Severin, and I don't know, Vinegar Syndrome. We've basically been in the business the same amount of time, so I'm friends with the owners and all of that.
That's fun. Well, it kind of makes sense. Anyways, that's just it feels like there's a lot of commonalities in the way that the packaging, there's a stress on the creative packaging and sort of understanding of the consumer. So I don't know if y'all share insider traders secrets as well.
They all have my designer. It's really what it is.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah, everyone
That's
uses
amazing.
Pretty much. When I started Massacre, we there was this guy on eBay who would always outbid me on tapes. And this is when I thought tapes were going out of control, when big boxes were selling for $30. So nothing compared to what's happening right now.
Yeah.
He would always be the one outbidding me. And this is back when eBay would show you the person who was outbidding you, not with the little asterisks that they do now.
Uh-huh.
And I just kind of cold emailed him dude, what the heck? Stop it. You don't need every tape. This is ridiculous. But in a friendly banter way. And he was doing screenings in the Poconos, where he's from, in Pennsylvania, up in Stroudsburg. And he was doing actually posters for it. And he was showing me his graphic design. And I was like, hey, I'm doing this, want to do it. And now he designs a very good amount of Severins, a good amount of Vinegar Syndromes. he's done a little bit of everyone at this point as Terror Vision Records. So,
Wow. Well, speaking of small world, that's amazing. What a story.
yeah, he's a great guy, great designer. He used to design billboards and
Did he ever stop outbidding you?
No.
That son of a bitch.
No, I just found him my stuff in person. He overpaid on eBay.
That's amazing. So you kind of alluded to this a minute ago, but you have quite a wide range of like content in at least in the physical releases. So I don't know if I told you this as part of the email chain. I may have, but I just recently got in the out of print slip of Hack-O-Lantern. It finally came up on eBay, which was the only thing I was missing to go complete on your line. I think most of them I was able to buy in your store. There's a few that were out of print.
Nice.
But so I've seen 1 through 4 at this point, and then I've got Danger USA coming up next. But even within that, I feel like there's been already like a big range, and then Danger USA is different from any of those. So do you have a particular way that you go about seeking out content, or do you have a particular way that and then like Mahakal, is that right? That just came out. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but that's again like quite different. So I was trying to figure out like if there's like a unifying theme or a way that you kind of feel or seek out these movies.
It's just kind of the movies I've always been into. I've just always more liked weirder stuff. I always been a big fan of shot on video films, and I I love Italian films because they're like the Italians' version of American cinema, and often they're better than our cinema, in my opinion. But then you have India doing Mahalkal, which is great in its own right, and I just always like very esoteric cinema. I guess I've never really been able to answer that one accurately. It's just kind of the taste, I guess.
So far Hack-O-Lantern is like one of the, I'm going to start using that as an example of like what can be done really well from just like having a bunch of different really random elements in a film that probably shouldn't work together, but somehow work really well. And then recently just finished Fiend, which is another one that like I think that what he was able to do on, I don't know what the budget was for that, maybe $10. Like I don't know, but like what he was able to do with that budget and some of the basic special effects with like the supernatural elements was super creative. So I'm really liking what I've seen so far from y'all.
Thank you. Yeah, Hack-O-Lantern is a trip. It's actually why the producer has kind of confirmed it, but it's essentially Indian directors making an American film, but they're still putting in all of the Indian elements. They're just Americanizing them.
That's exactly what it felt like. Like it's kind of metal instead of like this long drawn out musical sequence about love or whatever, right?
Yeah, but they still have the music sequence in it.
Yeah.
Like that's the commonality, like the girl dancing around with the snakes, the ending of it, like that's very Bollywood cinema made by like a very acclaimed Bollywood director at the time who came here and made that and a lot of more like sexploitation stuff for Cinemax. And Fiend, like Don Dohler is just a maverick. He's like a one-man show, and that's my favorite film from him, honestly. So it's less gory one, but it's definitely his best.
It's great. It has some amazing lines too from the husband, just like the way that I don't know, like it's just a very funny movie that has its own personality. I'm trying to talk about it more to people and get more people to see it. It made me laugh a lot.
Did you see the bonus movie on that disc?
No, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't. What was it?
There's an Easter egg on that disc. I'm not sure how I honestly don't remember how you get to it, but it's on the special feature menu. If you just fuddle around on it enough, the Fiend will pop up, and it has his movie Blood Massacre on it as well, which is the meanest Don Dohler film, definitely. Like it's a very harsh film. Has a lot of the cast from Fiend. I think it's late 80s it was shot.
That's awesome. Well, that's the second one then, because Enter the Devil had a special bonus feature which was quite different from the movie.
Yes, yeah, California Connection.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because Enter the Devil, I was surprised it actually has a PG rating, right?
Yes,
which cracked me up because there's no way that film should be PG if you think about it in terms of like things kids should watch.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely not. It's just a weird rating system back then.
yeah. And then on the back of that was California Connection, which is by no stretch a PG.
Great film though.
Um,
Great film.
but yeah,
Lots of any hardcore films that have like extensive machine guns and car chases, that's A1 in my book.
Well, so speaking of this, we just were recently had a chance to speak with Justin La Liberty from Vinegar Syndrome,
Mhm.
and kind of talking about this idea of preservation, right? And as you get deeper into preservation and like kind of thinking about it through that lens, it gets harder to be the judge of which ones should or shouldn't be preserved. It's just sort of like, well, like film as a form should be preserved in any capacity, right?
I mean,
And
yeah, definitely. I mean, you gotta keep economics in it aside. So I mean, there's definitely some things that probably don't need to be like commercially sold but should be archived. I'd agree with you there.
yeah, and that's the fun thing I think about California Connection, for example, right? Is it's like probably not a big audience naturally for it, like outside of maybe people seeking like old interesting pornographic films or like maybe historic kind of movies.
You would be surprised. There is still a selection of customer that orders with checkbooks. And that's the kind of stuff they want. I don't sell it, but some of the 15 do, and that's how they get it.
That's funny. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, it's a surprise. Yeah. I think it all crosses over at the end of the day, in all honesty, within the genre stuff, because the porn was made by the horror people. It's one and the same essentially in my kind of book. Because that was the same crew as Enter the Devil. Dave Cass wrote it. It's just what they did after.
Exactly. Yeah, that was what made me laugh so hard. Like, what a follow-up film.
Oh, it's a great.
Yeah. And I don't know if he used the same set, but it looked like it.
So same set.
Okay, it was. That's awesome. I mean, that at least logistically that makes sense.
Yeah, you got movies for two markets. It's the beauty of the exploitation business.
Yeah. Economies of scale, I guess.
Oh.
So you've been doing this since 2007. Got into the distribution game in 2011. I stopped the first round of sort of like collecting right around 2009, 10, because I started around 2001. You read my mind. So that's kind of what I was going to ask. Like, how has this been for you jumping into physical media kind of around that time? Like, how like what changes have you seen over these last 10 years? Like, how's that been?
Well, I don't like really come from means, so jumping into it, I pretty much jumped into it when the business died, the first time.
Okay.
So like around then is when because I bought the rights to 555 in 2009, I believe. So like by the time I was getting into it, when I would annoy like Jerry or Don at Synapse, they'd just be like, our sales are literally cut in half. Like, why would you want to do this? But I worked a $7 an hour job, so it doesn't really take much to be better than that at some point. So
okay.
I could survive just poor for years and years. There's definitely been within the past, definitely during the pandemic. The pandemic has felt like it's almost added multipliers of people starting to get into these films, which is really cool. But definitely within the probably around the time actually Hack-A-Lantern came out. Like it's nowhere as it was in 2006 and 2007. It's still a skeleton of what it used to be, but it's a little bigger now at least.
But that was the
losing
joke.
Money on everything.
that's like dark humor there, but like there's that was kind of the joke. Was like Anchor Bay, those old limited editions used to be like 90,000, right?
Oh yeah, I think the Army of Darkness was like 250,000.
And it felt like, oh man, I better go buy it.
Oh yeah, that like Beyond tin that I think was 80,000. That was the coolest.
Oh god, I love that you know about those tins. I feel like there's probably, I don't know, I went complete on the tins the first time before I stopped collecting, and I've got them kind of on a shelf somewhere now. I go back to them every once in a while, but like I never see. I don't. Are you on Reddit at all?
No.
okay, so people will post their collections. There's a few different subreddits where people like post their collections, you know, and I never see those tins. I never hear people talk about them.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. The guy who actually ran the distribution company I used to be signed to, CAV, they're the ones who like that was their products. Like that was they were the ones who did those.
Oh, that name sounds familiar. Actually, I think I've seen it. What
Yeah, all of
specifically?
like it's all like almost every other label was on them.
Which has kind of become MVD now, right? Like
Yeah,
in terms of
everyone came to MVD. I'm gonna remain solo on my own. I'm not going back to distributors, but
okay, yeah,
yeah.
I see MVD popping up a lot now.
Yeah, MVD has basically signed everyone minus a few people.
Okay,
They
okay.
do good. They're slaying it, so I see why. But
Yeah, is this a good time for you then as an independent to be in physical media? Like, are you happy you're here now?
I mean, it's really all I know, to be honest. So it's like one of those kind of situations. Definitely happy to be here, but you know, it's not the most lucrative thing in the world. So I'm definitely like always pursuing side things.
Oh yeah,
But,
I
yeah,
appreciate the honesty on that. That's interesting. It just, I guess, from the outside in, it feels like 2019 and especially 20 and then 21, like, you know, stuff that has like 5,000 units, limited edition, 5,000 units is gone in like days or like for sure weeks. You know, I don't know. It feels like I've never been a part of something that feels like there's a sort of a panic around getting these limited editions and panic around like making sure you get them fast. So I don't know if that's felt on y'all's side as well, but
oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely a lot of 3 or 4 days after ordering, people wondering why they haven't gotten them yet and stuff like that. That happens quite frequently with a lot of the newer people, but what can you do?
well, that's good. I hope it continues to be successful for you. Do you what kind of titles do you have coming next? I know there's the one that's I'm sorry that I have it pre-ordered. The title escapes me, but it feels like it's kind of about like catfishing type of like
Oh,
horror film
TFW?
maybe. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the documentary?
Yeah. I've got.
Yeah, it's TFW No GF by Alex Lee Moyer. It's like kind of like a documentary portraying like just weird internet culture and kind of what the havoc mixed with modern society it's wrecked on like poor areas and stuff, from my opinion. I guess a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on that one, but I thought it was a pretty cool documentary. Yeah, we're working on that one right now. It's being manufactured, so when those get in, we got those out. Flesh Contagium is about to come out. That's from Alex Visante in Italy, and they're like this really cool little clique of filmmakers there, and they're really big fans of like Bruno Mattei and all the good directors. So their films are kind of very adjacent to those, but modern day and a little bit more low budget, but they're a lot of fun. Working on Olaf Ittenbach's Divorce and trying to get the Men Behind the Sun trilogy finished, but we're going back to the raw scans from them and not using the Hong Kong restoration because they applied a lot of digital stuff into them. So we're having to go piece them back together.
Oh shit!
Well, a little longer, but
are you going to be doing some more Cat 3 stuff then? Is that sort of are you trying to seek out more of that?
Yeah, definitely. We got Horrible High Heels coming out as well. And a few more, but those aren't announced yet. Horrible High Heels really isn't announced. I've just posted stills from it, but we're going to be doing that one with the full duck scene intact for the first time in HD and unblurred.
Are you going to be doing the thing in like Cannibal Holocaust where they have the cruelty-free version?
No, we will not.
I imagine that'd be a nightmare. You would?
If people don't want to see that, just watch another movie.
Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah.
Anyways, we kind of joked about that. It's a funny idea to think about a cruelty-free Cannibal Holocaust. Like I don't know, it's just it's a funny concept to put that out.
I mean, it's harsh scenes. They're harsh films.
Yeah.
I try to stay as far as I can away from removing things from films, just on like a moral level. Like even if it's content, like I obviously I don't really like agree with animal violence, and I wouldn't do it myself, and would condemn people doing it. But these are films of the past. So
yeah, it's preserving an era, right? That it's
Yeah.
like here's what it was like in its original form.
I mean, in Cannibal Holocaust, some of the extras they have were fighting to eat the monkey brains after like they were done shooting. So I guess it's a different way of living.
Yeah, no, exactly. I totally agree with that. That's crazy. Well, it's good to hear. So we just speaking of a lot of people jumping into the distribution game, we just recently spoke with a company. I don't know if you've met them yet. They're called Error 4444.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Okay.
Sam.
Yeah, and they were exactly, and they were talking about trying to find some Cat 3 stuff as well. And then who was it? I feel like somebody else was recently mentioning that. So it seems like that's going to get some love here in the next few years, which is interesting. And I mean, those films have been kind of underground for so many years. But then I remember like seeing. Have you ever seen one called Ricky O?
Oh yeah.
And I just remember
Yeah,
I
that
saw
one's
that in
great.
theaters. Yeah, I was like, this is one of the best things I've ever seen. Like this movie's so amazing. Anyways, so
Oh yeah,
I'm glad this.
it's a really good one. There's Unearth Films is putting out Untold Story. Not Untold Story. They already put that out. Dr. Lamb. Have you seen that one?
No.
Oh
No.
wow. It's in my personal opinion, it's the best Cat 3 film out there. Like
Okay.
like it's better than Untold Story, better than Men Behind the Sun. It's the cream of the crop.
It's the one that should
It's
have won
so
the
unnerving.
Oscar.
Yeah, it's so unnerving. It's like right
Okay.
before they kind of started going more like Ebola syndrome and being super kind of goofy but fucked up. So it's like right on that cusp of like perfect nihilism mixed with a cop drama mixed with just like shit you don't really want to look at.
Wow.
It's a good one, Dr. Lamb.
Okay. No, noted. That's great. Yeah, it's interesting watching the way that this. Oh yeah, actually, I think it was Unearth. Now that you say that, I think that's the other company I recently saw putting out some more Cat 3 stuff. So that's
Steve's been getting some good stuff recently. I think he's
is
also
totally on
doing
brand.
Calamity of the Snakes, and
Wow,
he's a good guy. He's a good guy.
that's cool. That's great. Okay, well, yeah, Louis, thanks. I mean, this is I would love to at some point. I don't know if it's today, but if you're ever open to coming back, I'd love to have a sort of like a history lesson of just sort of like the distribution game. So some of the stuff you said is really fascinating. Like I didn't realize there's about 15 people that are kind of running the show from the distribution side, and like a lot of the names you're dropping so casually are people that obviously I don't know about just as a casual collector, right? So if you're open to it at some point, would you mind maybe coming back and having it be like a little more of a I don't know. I'll have to figure out what it is. If it's getting a few people on the line together, or just telling stories from kind of early days of collecting here as the
I mean,
industry's kind
yeah,
of building.
definitely. They more have the stories because mostly like the generation before, like myself and Vinegar Syndrome, those were all the people who worked at Anchor Bay.
Is
So
that what
they've been,
happened? Like a lot of.
yeah. Yeah, Anchor Bay. Like the reason why the releases were amazing is because the director of Maniac, was the curator.
Lustig, right?
Yeah, then he went and started Blue Underground, and all of these guys worked for him. A lot of the labels worked for him. So the owners of the current ones.
Oh wow, that's great. So the lineage is kind of like in college football, they talk about like coaching trees and how many people like go under Nick Saban and like go become good coaches or whatever. So it's sort of like Bill Lustig is the guy, and then
you can even go farther back than him if you start going in the film distribution.
Okay.
You can trace it back deep if you want, but that's just my nerdiness.
No, I mean I'm interested. Like, where would you go a level beyond that?
I mean, right there, you could just go to like distributors who were putting out his movies and got him to where he was.
Was that CAV or?
No, I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember their names, but that's whoever was the producers on Maniac, and I guess the people who really got Maniac out there.
Got you. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I don't know that generation. I'm far removed from it. I just know this stuff because I work around the people a lot who worked with Lustig. So.
Well, I know that I've always known there was a tie between like Blue Underground, for example, and Severin, but I just didn't really know exactly what it was. So basically, Severin, they're friends.
Yeah.
That's the tie. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. That's it. Yeah, they worked. I mean, I hope David wouldn't mind me saying he worked for David. I mean, he worked for William when he first got in the industry, and I think around when did Severin start? Like 2003 or four, maybe. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah, that I mean, like that sounds about right. Like 2005 is kind of the number I have in my head, give or take a year or two.
I feel like I
know
was
they
getting the Emmanuel box sets around that time.
yeah, they were putting out just a few films a year, right? And then they kind of really kicked it up. I feel like around maybe 8 or 9, where they started putting out like a ton of stuff. Maybe a year, a little bit before that.
Yeah, definitely.
And
And
now
now they're just going crazy.
now they're putting out Going Overboard, which is kind of great.
Oh yeah, that one's fun.
Like, I mean, the movie too, but I like the idea that like this next generation of physical media is going to come from like Severin and Vinegar Syndrome, like, you know, and hopefully like you get in this game as well. But it's like people that have had like a passion for thinking about from the consumers, like who's buying this, right? Like, what is the packaging? What, like, how do you treat special features? Things like making sure that subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing are like included, right? Like that's one of the things I've been super impressed with your releases. It's small detail, but like when you hit play, like for 3 out of the 4 films, the first question after you hit play is, do you want subtitles?
Yeah. The movies need to be seen by everyone possible. And there was just a lot of deaf collectors at conventions, so that was
Just blows my
also
mind.
another reason.
Well, but like it, you know, not to pick on anybody, but like Criterion doesn't do that. Like if you go to like, I think they're getting better.
I mean, I don't want to shit talk Criterion because obviously they're a great company, but it's like a dinosaur. You know, like their restorations aren't anything special anymore. Like Vinegar Syndrome does the same level of work and puts, 78 titles a month out with better extras. Like the extras Severin, the extra work Severin puts on their disc alone is like dwarfing anything they would like do back in their heyday. So I think they're just a very romanticized brand personally. They put out great films, but it's like everyone's kind of on that level at this point.
Well, yeah, no, totally. Like getting the Criterion treatment.
The brand.
Yeah, like that used to mean something very specific, right? Like getting the Criterion treatment. So it's kind of become part of like the way people talk about collecting. But the reality is, like you said, like even little choices like Vinegar Syndrome, they talk about reels instead of chapters, or like Severin that has like soundtracks included in a lot of their stuff. Anyways,
I mean, the amount of extras Severin produces, not even for their own releases, just for everyone else as well. Like, I mean, like David's, he's made feature-length documentaries on the makings of these films and stuff, and they're insane. Like the amount of stuff they put out, I think dwarfs a lot of the majors definitely. And I mean, I think the market for premium product at retail stores really isn't a thing. So kind of leads it to the weird niche companies, I guess, in a bizarre way. I'll probably stay in like the gutter realm of it, to be honest, because that stuff's more fun to me.
That was my next question. Yeah. So is that where you like hanging out?
Yeah, definitely. That's more my speed, 100%. It's just more me as a person, and it's just like a personality flaw at the end of the day. But I prefer more just to like do things at my own pace rather than be like, we have to be a corporation and do this and here and here and here and grow in X and Y. It's more like we got the boat somewhat stable after a decade. It's fine. Let's chill on it and make nice releases, but don't like try not to resent the product is I think the key.
Oh, that's great. Great. What a great tagline. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If there was I appreciate you being flexible and just kind of talking about, the more the industry at large and like other labels and stuff. If there's something that you would want people to know that aren't like currently don't really know a lot about Massacre Video, is there either like a title you would point them to get started, and then kind of like as a side question, like is there a takeaway sentence or anything you would want them to like think about you when they're thinking about collecting? Does that question make sense?
Not really for the second part, honestly.
Okay.
And I mean, I guess it would really depend on the. I gotta have to give them the convention spiel. Like, it really just depends on their taste. Because if they have one broad taste, I can usually guide them into a title. But it's really hard for some of them because I can't recommend everyone a Roscoe, unfortunately. Or some people more want the comedic stuff. So, I guess if you're more into like the more subversive extreme side, I would say Tamakichi Naru's films and Surasaki Taokaka's films are definitely the way to go. Um, if you're, I guess, actually, I'll backtrack a step, like a step back, saying I like Remaining in the Gutter. TFW really isn't a gutter film. Like, it was official selection at South by, so I guess we kind of are expanding into larger areas on second thought. But I guess gutter larger areas possibly, because that movie does seem to still like drag controversy with it. But so I guess I don't know. It's that's a hard question for me to answer.
I like it though. Here's the thing, like, you know, in the one thing I've noticed being on Reddit is just in the last 2 years. I don't even know how long I've had an account. It's not much more than 2 years, but sort of getting into these film communities here is like if you meet 10 people there, they're all going to have extremely wide range of experience, interest, and knowledge, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this is a lot of times for people, as I kind of talk about this, it's like when you're like 15, 16 years old, you kind of like maybe are introduced to Criterion at some point as like something that's not a Transformers movie or like not a Pirates of the Caribbean movie or whatever. And
Oh
then,
yeah, 100%.
right? Yeah, then you kind of find about this world that's like bigger. Nowadays, it might be Arrow or even Vinegar Syndrome that might be that gateway, possibly Severin. Anyways, like I don't know, you kind of have these companies that are sort of like gateway, and then it's a very natural extension to kind of go beyond, like deeper into those areas of interest, right? And
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so
Yeah,
like
like
one of
that's.
the common things that go ahead, no please.
Oh no, you go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, one of the common things I've heard just consistently now from like either people like comments online or people talking about a movie and saying, yeah, but like, what about this? Is like stuff like Cat 3 doesn't get representation, right? Like, there's this whole giant genre of films that's like out there that was seen at the time of release, that was impactful, and it's just not getting sort of the time of day or like release. But like, it feels like this is kind of tying into my earlier question then about like, are you seeing any changes? Because what it feels like to me, at least, is that this is the first time where companies are going like really on the fringe and putting out amazing product, not just like 10 movies on a disc, but like really nice product, and it's
Well,
getting
we
sold
grew
out.
up around. I mean, I did. I grew up around those terrible sets, like those
Yeah.
Mill Creek boxes that would have,
Yes.
and it would be just pixelated beyond belief. And like, it's still fine. I'd watch them and not complain because whatever, it's a movie. But they have never been represented. Like those types of movies have always been. There's always been like gatekeepers against them. You can't get a lot of that stuff into retail. There's always been like arbitrary rules that never really made sense, but everyone had to conform to. And now with like things like Shutter out there, where like this is just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. This is like my speculation from my little P point, but it feels like that old system is just literally crumbling around us currently. And this is the first time like we can vocalize this stuff, because the fact that people like, I remember when I was younger and I would look up Tumbling Doll of Flesh, for instance, there were like 2 sites that had information about it. That was
Right,
it.
right,
And that was it.
right.
And now it's like you Google it and it's like on like lists and stuff, and people like know what it is. And like, yeah, I mean, it's sure it's a flawed film aside. I personally I don't know, I just like that guy's work a lot, but it's it just seems stuff, if it doesn't have a corporation behind it, it takes like 15-20 years to catch on. So I kind of think we're in that renaissance as well, so people are now finally seeing this stuff.
It's great, and really wanting it, right? Like, which is kind of fun, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely, which is the cool part of it, because I mean, they're really cool movies, and they get just I mean, still, like a lot of the people who buy like the Massacre stuff for the first time, they kind of get mad at some of it, and for them, I'd more recommend like Shout Factory or Vinegar Syndrome or like one of the bigger labels. But
yeah,
this stuff definitely, I think the weirder movies should be a little bit taken more seriously, but that's just my bad personal taste. And Yeah.
I think that's a perfect note to end it on. Look, thank you, Louis. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right, and welcome back. Now we're going to be talking about the film Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. I'm going to mess up the English one, and I'm going to get the Spanish one right. Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. And its original name is Tame, and it is directed by Pedro Almodovar. There we go. I don't know why I do this one. I really should just do another corner. Trying to pronounce these names. The film is about just released from a residential psychiatric. That's a weird way to explain that. Where he becomes an all-around handyman, gentle orphan Ricky pursues his sole pathological obsession. Penniless, hence without a chance to court her, he kidnaps porn actress Maria from the set of a crippled director Maximo's last movie. At first, she hates her abductor. Once she realizes he risks and bears everything for her, she becomes feeling for him too, but won't she still escape and return to her family and career? ?
Jesus, that's such a long-winded fucking way of describing this film. Holy God!
And it's a super basic film too. So
yeah, he got this is the film. He ties her up so that he can tie her down so that she'll marry him. That's the film. There's no need to go into subplots here.
and
ties her up so that he can tie her down. There we go. That's the film. Thank you for coming. That's it. What did you think of this? When I had read, I remember last week when we were talking about this and the film was coming up, and I had read the description. I thought that you were going to like this film, Zach. So I want to hear your thoughts first off. That's okay.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I've ranked it as second in our film club. I just think it's a lot it's not the best movie we've watched in this. That's still Night of the Hunter. But it's absolutely the most fun I think I've had with any of the movies we've watched. I just think it's ridiculous. I think it has this fun tone to it that it really has this sense of self-awareness that just kind of makes you believe in this whole ridiculous plot altogether. So I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, it's definitely fun. I think the only film I had more fun watching was maybe Dames or Tampopo. But yeah, this film, if nothing else, the film is a wild ride. It's fun. I didn't love it. There were a lot of things I thought were pretty stupid. But it's fun. That's definitely an accurate description of the film. If you could only put it down to one word, it's fun.
Especially with its dark subject matter. To say it's fun, great.
Yeah. It's literally a guy who, ties up a woman and essentially kidnaps her, holds her against her will until she eventually succumbs to Stockholm syndrome. Dark film, really dark film. Fucking fun though.
Yeah, it's funny. So I always think of that quote. I can't remember if I said it here on the previous podcast or if it was on the chat, but the John Waters quote when he was talking about multiple maniacs, and he said, I want to be clear, rape is never funny unless you're getting raped by a lobster, in which case it's kind of funny. And I feel like, that kind of mischievous sense of humor is what I've always enjoyed about Almodovar. And so this movie, I've always liked it. It's one that I really love. I think it's very funny. It's not going to win any critics awards probably for depth and metaphor and allegory or whatever, right? It's just sort of meant to be this kind of light romantic comedy with the darkest subject matter possible.
Yeah, you say it's not overly deep, but this, in a way, the way he presents it kind of is. I was kind of reminded of, I know I've talked about this film a lot on the podcast, Le Bonheur by Agnes Varda, and the plots of these films could not be any really different, but they do kind of follow a similar creative thread in which the director presents the film so that you think we're watching something else, and really we're watching something darker. So, the way Almodovar using, sort of music as a bit of levity to it, very lush, colorful cinematography. He lures you into thinking you're going to watch a romantic comedy when really we're watching a horrible sort of situation play out. It's obviously not as subtle as Le Bonheur, which is very subtle with its with its darkness to the point where I got to near the end of the film until I realized really what I was watching play out. So it's not as subtle as La Bonheur, but I appreciate, what Almodovar is doing in how he played, and how he sort of put it out on the table, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. Have you guys ever seen this? Adam's going to be great and get some Vard out here. Have you guys ever seen The Notebook?
Oh, Christ. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So there is a point to this. That movie's terrible for anyone who's even somehow not seen it. Do you guys remember that part? It's at the very beginning, so this isn't a spoiler, where he's trying to court Ryan Gosling's trying to court Rachel McAdams at the Ferris wheel. So he like climbs onto the Ferris wheel and threatens to drop himself and kill himself unless she goes on a date with him. That is like how their first date happens.
Just pure.
And it reminded me like, and that whole thing's played as romantic. It's played as this is fine. This is hey, this is a normal thing that people should do. Be manipulative. And this film, while obviously it came out years before that, it kind of feels like that commentary on how a lot of these rom-coms are. These people are sometimes assholes to each other, and then by the end everything's okay. Doesn't matter. It's manipulative or the dumb things or the abusive things you did. Everything's fine now. Yeah,
it happens so much, and I'm so sorry to go on a really mad tangent here, but just a really quick tidbit about The Notebook while we're on it before we move on. The Notebook, I've nothing bad to say about the film, just even though it's a crap film. I have nothing specifically bad to say about it. But do you know who directed The Notebook?
No, I actually don't.
John Cassavetes' son.
Are you serious?
Nick Cassavetes, who's made his career from making shitty Nicholas Sparks adaptations. So the great indie director.
You're not kidding. He really is.
Yeah. There you go.
Dad make like good movies and like struggle to find food, and he was like, nope.
Yeah, you just imagine.
And he played in Face Off, so that makes up for everything.
I'm sure. I'm sure John is turning in his grave somewhere. But sorry, I digress. We'll move on to the film at hand. I just didn't know if you knew that, and I always find it funny.
No, that's awesome. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Speaking of critically revered films, like The Notebook, They Shoot Pictures has Time Me Up, Time Me Down at 25/16.
That's
too low. Too low.
Too low, really? Oh, I think it's fair.
Needs to be in like the top 1,000 at least.
Thousands. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd put it there.
It's interesting when you start getting into directors like Almodovar, whose like career is not necessarily over yet. I mean, he's slowed down quite a bit, but like they were making films like in the 90s and 2000s. I don't know that critics quite know what to do because they have a large body of work and like a lot of those films are good. And I don't really know if they it's kind of like this weird thing when you're rating movies of like, do I put 8 Almodovar films in my top 100? It might be too much. There's like a big body of work. So I think this film might suffer just even from that. Like it's not even the most critically acclaimed and like quote unquote best, Almodovar film. So, and some people in our film club would have said this was his worst. Some people did not like it. But I, to be honest, Zach, as much as I liked it, my vote would probably be this is probably fair as well. Especially now that you like this one, I would recommend going and seeing some of his other ones that came out kind of between like late 90s and 2010, like in that time period.
I've seen The Skin I Live In, and I really love that one as well.
Yeah, it's great.
That was the first one I'd heard of. This was actually my first Almodovar film. I had heard of The Skin I Live In.
I think he was nominated for Pain and Gain, or at least Banderas was maybe finally nominated for Academy Award. That came out a few years ago. I can't remember. I'm gonna look it up.
I don't know, but that's. I feel like every week or every other week or something, there's a big director where for one of us it's our first time with him.
Yeah, I suppose there's such a, there's been so many sort of legendary, or maybe you wouldn't call Almodovar legendary, but at least yet while he's still living. But there's so many sort of major, directors, especially in world cinema, like Spain, like Germany. Spain is not a very well treaded territory filmically for me. Mm-hmm. Like I'm pretty sure this is only like the second Spanish film I've ever seen. Not in the Spanish language, but like the second film like produced in Spain.
Spirit
that
of
I've
the Deep.
seen. Oh crap! No, it's the third then. 'Cause I was thinking of Death of the Cyclist.
Oh,
Death of
okay.
the Cyclist. Is that the
And I
title?
was over here thinking of Perdita Durango and Day of the Beast.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, I just want to go on the record to say, watch Matador, watch Woman on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown.
Heard that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All About My Mother.
All About My Mother. Yeah.
Yeah, Talk to Her and Bad Education. Those are the ones. So we'll put
Oh
them
yeah.
on.
I want to say, like, I even though I said I didn't really think the film was great or anything, like, I cannot take anything away from Almodovar. Like, he directed the film impeccably. Some of the imagery he invoked was amazing. Even the sort of Christian imagery. Like, the film kind of opens on like a portrait of, I think it's either the Virgin Mary or Jesus himself. Can't remember exactly, but there's, he invokes a lot of imagery. His direction was fantastic. In the hands of a much lesser director, this would have been like a shitty thriller that nobody would ever talk about ever again.
No, I
So,
agree with that. Yeah. It's
like,
it's incredibly B movie, and that's probably my attraction to it. But
yeah,
it's
like, this film is nothing if not creative. He takes a very simplistic plot that could have been any film school dropout could have made a film like this. Having a fucking creep kidnap a woman. It's been done. Every second episode of Criminal Minds is about that plot. So it's not exactly an original idea, but the way he tells it is extremely original, and you can only really give him credit and plaudits for that, because to take such a basic idea and make it so off the wall, bonkers, whatever way you want to describe it, you have to give him plaudits for that at the very least.
There's one thing I would definitely have changed, and it's going to sound like I'm going to give a spoiler, but I'm not. So do you guys remember when the Directimo Maximo is like editing the film and they're trying to figure out how to end it, and the guy was just like, just write the end and be done with it? I was really hoping that would be the end of the movie. Like, when they get towards the end, it's just write the end and be done with it, because we can't solve this issue.
Well, I feel like the film kind of plays out that way. I'm going to do a little spoiler warning. So if you're listening and haven't seen the film, spoiler warning, just giving you a heads up. I feel like it kind of does that in a way with this film. This is the kind of the part that I really didn't like, and it was how quickly, I can't remember the character's name.
It's her sister, yeah.
Well, no, the main character. I can't remember her name. The main, what was it? Marlena?
It starts with an M.
Marina.
Marina. Yeah. How quickly she kind of turned, in terms of like how quickly she fell into the whole Stockholm syndrome. That kind of
was wondering about that too. And I almost felt like part of it was her playing into it, like, at least at the beginning. Like, I don't, this is speculation on my part, so just warning there. There's nothing necessarily in the film that says this. But I kind of felt like maybe she was playing into it a little bit, so he'd give her a little bit more freedom, and then she'd take advantage of it. And then it just, playing into it sort of done that.
It's all a bit easy, though.
Oh, yeah, it's not.
And this is what
no, it still doesn't make it like... They're doing something that takes years. I mean, you take about like Ariel, this is going to be a lot actual dark subject matter, but you take like Ariel Castro here in the U.S. who kidnapped, I don't know, 3 or 4 women, held them captive for decade and a half. And I mean, they didn't really have Stockholm syndrome by the end. I mean, they were ready to escape for that entire time. So, you're taking a process that takes so much time, and it doesn't work on every single person. And it's even debated if it exists. So, it's kind of a complicated thing to figure out, I guess, in a movie like this.
This is kind of, sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, this is just kind of my point I was saying, as in, let's just finish the movie. It's kind of me thinking, Pedro's kind of going, okay, let's just have her turn. Let's have her kind of escape. Let's have her get together with him. The end. Let's just finish the movie. We spent an hour and a half building this up. Let's just finish it. Kind of like what I was saying about Palm Beach Story a few weeks ago, where you got to a certain page number and you thought, fuck it, let's just finish the movie. That kind of way. Now, I really tried to debate this for myself to kind of come up with a reason why she would turn so quickly. I was kind of thinking, is her porn star, drug-addled past, maybe because she's such a broken person, any sort of attention, she's happy
almost
to
feel
get
like
it.
someone cares about her.
Yeah,
sort
exactly.
Of thing.
I was trying to justify it in my mind, thinking, it must be because, she's a drug addict, or because she used to be a porn star. She's getting someone's giving her attention, love, and affection, even if it's a really twisted, fucked up way to do it. She's getting it. Maybe that's why she's so receptive. But at the same time, it's not like she's now a successful actress. Okay, she's a B-movie actress, but she's having success. She's a nice apartment. She's a family who cares about her. So I couldn't really justify it.
She has a support system. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I just couldn't if he had picked her up off the street or something like that, then maybe I could have bought into it a little bit more. But she just walked out of her filming her starring role in this horror movie, and her sister's great and always around, and she was supposed to meet and go to a dance club with her sister to meet some friends. I couldn't justify it, and maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just kind of grated me.
I want to take a slightly different approach. What if, I'm not trying to speak for Pedro Almodovar, but what if we're looking at it from the wrong way? What if he's not trying to justify the kidnapping and like grooming of a woman to fall in love? What if it's like a critique of rom-coms? And what if he's taking a sort of a poke at like how ridiculous like the plot of every rom-com is throughout history, and how quickly people fall in this like, I have one magic person like supposed to fall in love, like in like a lot of the situations that people find themselves in, like it's not really what happens in real life, right? And so what if he's just kind of taking like a mischievous, devilish kind of turn on like the rom-com genre and saying, what about this? Like this is no more ridiculous than any of the other crap that's out there.
So essentially taking the manipulations and abuses that Zach talked about and kind of making the extremist version of that.
Almost to a farce in a sense.
Yeah, maybe like not even necessarily focused on the fact that it's like about the abuse or Stockholm syndrome, but more of just like you guys watch just like you don't care what the content of these rom-coms are. If two people are presented, you just somehow, for some magical reason, you want them to end up together. So here I'm gonna make you kind of uncomfortable, like the same thing that Hanukkah does in that movie Funny Games, where he's like,
yeah,
okay, like we're about to get super uncomfortable here if this is what you want.
Okay, I can get
it's almost like
that.
challenging the audience on what they actually want. Like,
yeah.
And it also goes back to almost what you're saying, like how we deal with questionable protagonists. The ones who aren't really good people, but they're presented enough to where we're going to root for them. Where if we were given the villain, we'd root for them because that's our focal point. It's almost like, do you believe this relationship at the end?
Yeah, right. And in those other films, the directors and writers don't have to work that hard to convince people that they're supposed to be together. We just kind of go for it. So, like, why would this be any different, right?
Okay.
I think that's a pretty fair reading. I did want to bring up, going with the end and going with that as well, she has a certain look at the very end, him and the sister really, get along and everything. And she just almost has like this sense of regret.
Yeah, it really reminded me of the end of The Graduate.
Yes. I agree with that completely.
Yeah, it really reminded me of that, where she's thinking, fuck, what now?
Yeah.
And he's he, obviously, unlike The Graduate, where they both kind of have that mutual feeling of, oh shit, what now? It's only really her. Like he's buzzing. His sister, her sister is having a good time, and she's sort of slowly going, oh, what the fuck am I gonna do now? What's the next step here? I caught that as well.
Someone who tied you up for 3 days.
Yeah.
Adam, I think I found your fourth Spanish film. You saw Viridiana with us, right?
Oh shit! Yeah, I forgot. I have been constantly thinking that Viridiana was a different film. This is how little I cared about Viridiana. I realized whenever I was like thinking back on Viridiana and like thinking of moments in the film or people who were in it or plot points, I was instead thinking of Diary of a Chambermaid. I've only realized I've seen Diary of a Chambermaid because I was like looking through the lists of films that were expiring, and Diary of a Chambermaid came up, and I'm like, wait,
did I see that?
I've seen that. And then I went and looked up Viridiana, and I'm like, wait, this is a different film. I've seen both of these, and they just kind of merged in my brain as the same film. Yeah, I didn't really care for Verdi. That's very low on my ranking. I didn't care for that film.
I think that in a way, I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if I can back this up a lot, but I really like Buñuel, and Viridiana probably lesser than some of his other stuff. But I think Almodovar, maybe at least in his humor and the way like his subject matter, is sort of a successor to Buñuel in terms of, because Buñuel was like very provocative, right, when he was working, and Almodovar, most of his films are like very provocative. And so that's he's the one that turned me on to Buñuel, because I kind of was like, oh, do they make good films in Spain? After I saw Bad Education in the theaters, I kind of went backwards. And so, anyways, there's always a connection there in my mind, but I'm going to be a little bit biased towards Almodovar just for that. He kind of opened my eyes to Buñuel, who's now one of my favorites.
I do want to note the best visual gag in the movie, which is like overly simple, but I love it just because there's a part where the editing scene, and on the door there's Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers poster on the door, and I thought that was great. I have no greater point to that than it's an obvious joke, but I thought it was great.
That is good. That just reminds me of something about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Reminded me, isn't Guillermo del Toro from Spain as well?
He's from Mexico, isn't he?
Oh, he's from Mexico. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, let me just pull out my Pan's Labyrinth. I'll find
out. Well, Pan's Labyrinth was.
Oh, he's totally.
Yeah, like Pan's Labyrinth was produced in Spain. Because obviously it's set during the Spanish Civil War, but I'm pretty sure he was like born in Mexico.
I will think. Yeah, I think you're right, because I think. Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, because Pan's Labyrinth, the Criterion will say Spain because that's where it was produced. The same way if Criterion released The Shape of Water, it would say USA because that's where it was produced.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I've just looked it up. Yeah, he was born in Guadalajara, so he's Mexican.
All right, never mind.
We wouldn't want to insult all of our Mexican viewers by saying that they're Spanish or vice versa. So.
No.
Spanish speaking.
I was asking precisely because Pan's Labyrinth. I thought there was a connection to Spain there, but I guess it was only.
Yeah, it does take place, like Adam said, in the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, and I've never even seen the film. I just know that, so I can't.
You've never seen Pan's Labyrinth?
Nope.
I feel necessary to pick that next week. If it's on the channel.
If it's on the honestly, I've just been waiting for it to come on the channel because there's no good release of it here in Region B, and.
That whole trilogy is good, dude. You should just watch all three.
Yeah, I remember The Devil's Backbone. I was going to watch it as part of the film, the Criterion Challenge for the horror section, and I ended up watching Kuroneko instead. Pan's Labyrinth is one of those films I've been meaning to see for years and years and years and years and years, and it's just never fallen on my lap. It's never the time has never been right for it.
I think
you like magical realism stuff, you'll like this, and I say that as someone who doesn't care for it, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's very magical realism, but
I've heard fantastic things about it. I know the sort of basic premise, but yeah, it's just never, the stars have never aligned for me in Pan's Labyrinth yet,
I don't think it's going to come on the channel. Isn't that one of the ones they lost the rights to? Because that box set is out of print now.
Yeah, but it has an
individual I actually saw
release,
the DVD copy at my Barnes today.
Yeah, well, it has an individual. I know that he had a box set that is out of print, but I'm pretty sure each film has an individual release.
They do have individual releases, but I know Warner Brothers put out a 4K.
I'm just going to go to Criterion.com.
So they may have lost the rights.
Criterion.com will tell me. Let's go to Criterion.com.
Pan's Labyrinth. I think they have the other ones, but I think that one is. You said that's the one that got the 4K release, right?
Yeah, and it's a terrible 4K release. Just keep the Criterion.
I assume they probably lost the rights, but let's just humor me for a minute. Pan's Labyrinth. How the fuck do I spell labyrinth?
I screw it up. Don't ask me.
I'm just going to search Pan's and hope it comes up.
The V before the Y.
I literally just searched Pan's and just hoped that it came up. No, you can order their Blu-ray from Criterion's website. So.
Oh, that's super interesting. The Blu-ray's out of print, but the DVD's in stock. Of the box.
Criterion's website here.
Yeah, because the DVD box set was at Barnes today. That's what I thought was interesting.
Oh, you mean the box set is out of print? Yeah, well, you can buy the
box set was still available. And I thought it was out of print too.
And the Pan's Labyrinth Blu-ray, you can buy it on Criterion's website here now, so it's definitely not out of print anyway.
Right Stuff is so messy. Maybe because they put that 4K out, they wouldn't let him have the Blu-ray, but they let him have the DVD. That's so weird. Whatever. Okay.
But like I said, though, like the individual Blu-ray for Pan's Labyrinth is available.
Oh, that's right.
That's weird. I'd love to know what weird contract they had to get for that.
Yeah, exactly. So bizarre.
Anyway, Almodovar.
If Adam actually leaves us in, you'll see what all he has to edit out to make these episodes possible.
Eventually, we'll do a Patreon, and each sort of for the Patreon listeners / viewers, whatever we do, they'll just hear all the shit we ramble on with every episode. And just to give a sneak peek, in case we do, I'm going to leave this part in. So if you're listening right now, half of our content we record ends up on the floor because we just talk shit like this.
At some point, there's usually Chris screen sharing something, and we'll talk about that for a little while. And
it's usually something he's going to blow way too much money on that he's not going to tell his wife how much it costs.
And that's the Patreon, is the conversations I have with my wife when she finds out.
Do like a hidden camera scenario of her looking at the credit card bill.
Yeah.
I'd pay to actually. That would be a great Patreon thing. I'd watch that. I'd pay to for a Patreon.
Season 3 of one of these like crime shows that's big popular now.
It'll be a Netflix special about Chris's murder after he buys that Eric Romer box set.
Yeah,
knives.
Yeah, they'd be like, I mean, she's clearly did it, but like I kind of get it. What the hell is this?
Okay, and we're coming into our last segment, which as always is any other business. You probably know what I'm about to say. If you're a regular listener, I say the same thing every damn episode, but any other business, just a section for us to talk about a film we liked. Doesn't have to be Criterion, doesn't have to be good, just something that we want to give a quick shout out to. So I'll just jump in with mine really quickly because it's a super famous film. I'm sure most people have seen it, but it was my first time watching it because I had just never found an accessible way to see it before in Region B. Obviously ended up watching it on the Criterion channel, and it's Chinatown by Redacted.
Never seen it, never heard of it. Must be super indie.
Yeah, it's honestly like just one of those films that like have like less than 5 views on Letterboxd, and you kind of stumble across it. No, look, it's probably the best film by a rapist I've seen. Yeah.
Agreed.
No, like it's the film blew me away. Like when you kind of watch these revered films, you kind of have to set yourself expectations that it might not be as good as everyone says it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Chinatown was as good as everyone says it is. It's an awesome film.
Yeah.
It's dark, it's brutal, it's probably the most depressed. Like I'm a huge film noir fan. You guys know that. I'm sure the listeners know it by now. This is the most brutal film noir I've ever seen, man. The ending of this film, which everyone knows, like I knew what the last line of dialogue was going to be. I didn't know what the run-up was. I knew what the last line of dialogue is because everyone knows it's one of the most famous pieces of dialogue in film history. But man, this film was just so good. Every aspect of the film was just amazing. Just a pure crime film noir, neo noir, whatever label you want to stick on it. Just an absolute masterpiece of the film. Jack Nicholson was incredible. The direction by Redacted was awesome. And yeah, Chinatown. If you somehow never seen it, if you're like me and you just never had a chance to watch it anywhere, it's on the Criterion channel as of we're recording and release date. Watch it because it's just incredible.
I do think it's interesting. One thing I always find interesting about Chinatown is how much of a mainstream appeal it has because, like you said, Adam, it's incredibly dark and bleak. And you'd almost feel like, how did this get such mainstream success? Obviously, it's because everything's so well done in it, but like,
and honestly,
it's actually crazy to think about.
It wasn't even the darkness that kind of drew me. It's kind of how dense the plot is. Like, this is not like a simple murder mystery detective trying to find a murderer kind of deal. You know, the fact that a film about the distribution of water through the California, desert lands is so interesting is kind of it's kind of crazy how interesting that the screenwriter of this film, which has an incredible script. The script is incredible for this. The fact that he was able to make a film so interesting out of such a niche sort of kind of like I can't even call it nerdy because it's not even like it's just a really it's kind of like a boring subject matter, water distribution. Wow.
Yeah, it's like it's like when people go to jail for embezzlement. Like that's not that interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's just because it's such a basic thing, like water coming into your home, irrigation. It's such a basic, mundane thing that you don't even really think about it on a day-to-day basis. You don't think, where does my water come from? Nobody really thinks about that on a day-to-day. And the fact that we were able to make a film so interesting surrounding that entire facet was just, it's just awesome.
Joining Mad Max as the film's primarily dealing with water distribution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, Fury Road.
And then there's films with too much water, like Waterworld, but
What are you, IGN?
Sometimes some people say that Mad Max Fury Road is like the antithesis of Waterworld.
Yeah.
Cool. So what have you guys seen that you want to give a shout out to?
You want to go first, Chris? You want me to go?
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. I'll be quick. I'm going to talk about a few things, but I'll make all of them quick. We have interviewed the guy, Kyle, from Utopia Distribution on here before, and he was talking about future releases. And one of the ones we did not talk about, which is unfortunately, speaking of boring things, kind of boringly named, is one of the releases called Martha, A Picture Story. That, I don't know what the name of this movie should be, but it should not be that. This movie is awesome. Like, there's a random woman named Martha Cooper in the 80s in New York City who was trying to make it as a photographer and wound up getting embedded like deep into the culture of graffiti art and wound up capturing the subway trains that had graffiti on them, this really beautiful, intricate graffiti before the New York crackdown on graffiti. And her book was published called Subway Art, and it became sort of like this Bible for the next generation of graffiti artists. And then because she was in the world of graffiti, she also then kind of got in the early days of hip hop. So she has all these still shots of like these nascent little like small communities of graffiti and then hip hop, and then all breakdancing as well. And she's just like, and she kept all of her negatives. So she has like rooms full of just boxes of negatives of some of the most important like cultural movements that stemmed in the 80s out of New York. Unbelievable woman, super interesting. Constantly told her whole life she was never a real photographer because she took pictures of like people smiling, because real photographers would capture like pain and agony and stuff. So anyways, really interesting lady, really interesting story. I want to talk about this as much as I can. Martha, A Picture Story, bad name, super good movie. I also want to talk about Fellini's Casanova. Just quickly, I don't know how this doesn't get brought up more in terms of like Fellini's later movies, or maybe it does and I just missed it. But like this film, he's completely unhinged. Like, and somehow it works. Like I feel like Fellini's the only person they could go with zero restraints, completely uninhibited, and somehow it still works. Like it's a really fascinating movie. I forget the main actor now. It'll come to me here in a second. I keep thinking of Donald Pleasance, but it's not him.
The Terrence Stamp?
No. That there is a film with Terrence Stamp in Fellini, but it'll come to me here in a second. But yeah, it's just like it is the story of Casanova. But if you can imagine Fellini telling the story of Casanova, and everything is very over the top, very elaborate sets, like big choices in acting. Donald Sutherland, there we go. Sutherland.
I've just looked it up. The plot sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a very like they're not naked. There's no nudity in the movie, or if there is, it's like very limited. but it's just constant sex throughout the whole movie. But it's sort of like, again, done in this very like circus kind of clown oriented way that Fellini would make. And it's just very unique. I'm not going to say it's like, I liked it. Probably says more about me than anything else. I really enjoyed it. And then his follow-up film, Orchestra Rehearsal, just absolutely blew my mind. Like, it's it's just over an hour long. I would say everybody has to watch Orchestra Rehearsal if they want to see a Fellini of what he's capable of doing, because you get to meet these people that are preparing for an orchestra, and then in the last 20 minutes, you somehow see the fall of Western civilization as told in a metaphor, and it completely makes sense and it works, and it's just insane. It totally blew my mind. So I'll stop there, other than to say I am now finished. I finally did a ranking on for our film club. We're a year in, which is crazy. I can't believe that we're 52 weeks in. It's very exciting. And I did see Battle of Algiers. So I'll just say my top five. Zhao Wu number 1, Tampopo number 2, Close Up number 3, Once Upon a Time in the West number 4, Battle of Algiers 5, with 9 of the Hutter 6 looking in, but certainly in the top 10.
I suppose we might as well do our top fives as well before we ask Zach about his any other business. Let me see. So number 1 for me, which is probably unsurprising, Night of the Hunter. Number 2, which is again not surprising, Chungking Express.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, again not really surprising for me, is Close Up, because it's the only Kiarostami that we've done. Number 4 is Still Walking from Pareda, which I know you guys didn't overly love, to the point where we didn't even we skipped that week for the podcast.
I feel bad for skipping that week. That's one of your favorites.
Well, to be fair, there's not a whole lot you can talk about that film. It's just people talking. And then number 5 is Tampopo, with Zhao Wu just looking in. Like, I could honestly swap Zhao Wu and Tampopo around like at any given moment.
Yeah.
My top 5 was same. My number 1's the same as Adam's, The Night of the Hunter. Number 2 was Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down. Number 3 was Woman in the Dunes. Number 4 was Wolf Hole, which has the best name.
Yeah.
And then number 5 was Multiple Maniacs, with The Ascent being the honorable mention.
That's awesome.
Very, very diverse and different lists. But yeah, cool. And so what have you seen, Zach, that you want to give a shout out to?
I guess what I'll talk about, I actually just rewatched it. I guess this is about the 3rd or 4th time I've seen it. I've been a big fan of S. Craig Zahler's work since I saw Bone Tomahawk in 2015, which is a cannibalistic Western with Kurt Russell, which I recommend. It's great. It's very brutal. It has probably one of the most brutal kill scenes I've ever seen in a movie. Which
The bisection.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I know about that scene.
Yeah. And it got me into a lot of his other work. He of course, before he did that, he wrote novels. I've read several of his novels. He's a comic book writer now. His last film he did was in 2018, which is the one I kind of want to highlight, which is Dragged Across Concrete. And of course, one thing you'll notice, as Adam did, is he spends a lot of times naming his stuff. A lot of his stuff is very provocative. His second film was Brawl in Cell Block 99, which is obviously a love letter to Riot in Cell Block 11, Don Siegel. Which, if you're gonna kind of pick a couple directors, you can tell he grabs a lot of influence from. It's Don Siegel and Sam Peckinpah. He likes this violence. He spends a lot of time on dialogue. Some people would even say a lot of it's like a little bit of purple prose. Things are like said. Anytime something be said simple, like stand up or get up, it would be something like get vertical, which is just small things, but it's throughout the whole movie. And I think that could probably annoy some people, but makes it a lot more entertaining because his movies are really long. Like Dragged Across Concrete is 2.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
And it's a pretty simple plot. It stars Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn as these two cops who get a little rough with a suspect on a drug charge, and they're suspended without pay. So they decide that they are going to rob some bank robbers, and they kind of get involved with that. A lot of the movie is them just staking out this area, waiting on these people to leave so they can just rob them and get their money. And it's goes into a lot of different directions. It's incredibly violent. It's like I said, there's a lot of slow moments. It's a lot of the stakeout stuff, but Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn's chemistry is great. I think Zyler's really used Vince Vaughn insanely well, using like his huge stature and how built the guy is. He's been used in comedy for so much that it's actually really nice to see him play a more intimidating figure in a couple of movies. But it's got this real noir feel to it. So Adam, I mean, I know the runtime is probably a little bit of a killer for you, but it's a beautiful looking movie. It has a lot of dark. It has a lot of those elements to it, and I just highly recommend it for people who haven't checked out really any of this stuff.
Yeah. I looked them up. Obviously, I knew about Bone Tomahawk, and I kind of looked them up a bit. Obviously, after you put up your review of Dragged Across Concrete as well on the website, which if you're listening and you don't know our website, it's theylivebyfilm.com. But yeah, he sounds like a super interesting filmmaker. I am interested in exploring his work, and maybe if I can find some time, I'll watch one of his 2.5-hour pictures.
Yeah, he Dragged Across Concrete, just to give I'll make this short, it's a little bit of a history. It was 2 hours and 35 minutes, and it was supposed to be his first film to get a wide distribution, but he had final cut safe with Lionsgate, and Lionsgate said, make this movie 2 hours or we're not giving it a wide release. And he's like, I'm not going to cut it. And they gave him a very limited release and a DVD run, and that's it.
Wow.
I respect that. I respect him for doing that. Stay true to yourself. It's like you see a lot of filmmakers, they don't do that, and then they regret it 20 years later, and they put out director's cuts and final cuts. Ridley Scott.
Yeah, and I think it helped that he didn't start filmmaking until he was in his 40s. So I think he has that confidence that a lot of people who are 20 are like, it's getting a wide release. What opportunities am I going to have?
I suppose he's kind of thinking, it's like, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just going to do it my way. I'm happy to make. I'm making movies. This is cool. I'm just going to do it my way. Which, I massively respect that.
That wraps up this week's episode of They Live by Film. If you want to read more of our thoughts, visit theylivebyfilm.com. And you can also follow our Letterboxd, Reddit, and Instagram accounts from the links in the description. For now, take care.